Hey everybody, Brandon here. I just wanted to open this one up with a quick trigger warning. There is a lot of suicidal ideation in this episode. The last one, I did have a small trigger warning, but that was for like a couple minute segment. In this one, this warning is kind of impossible to avoid. It permeates the whole thing. So if hearing excessive thoughts of suicide, suicidal ideation is something that you do not want to, cannot, or don't feel comfortable hearing, this is an episode for you to skip. Otherwise, please enjoy episode number 10, Yukio Mishima. Hello and welcome back to I Am the Lore Keeper. As always, my name is Brandon Negro and I am the Lore Keeper today. We've got returning guests in Mariah.
Hello.
And Logan.
Hi there.
The question of the day to lead us into this episode is, who is the most multi-talented celebrity that you can think of?
Ooh. I do know that Dolph Lundgren is like, he has a PhD in chemistry or something like that, biochem.
Yeah, like he has actually like legit science chops on him.
Yeah. Like actually kind of a genius.
Right, what do you got?
I'm thinking like Tom Morello. Like he's
I love Tom
not
Morello.
a PhD, but like he's got like he's notable and he for Rage Against the Machine, but he also has like a business degree from Harvard or something.
It's like he reminds me very similar like Bruce Dickinson from Iron Maiden, where he also has like a PhD in something, and I think he has like a pilot's license or something, on top of just being one of the most legendary metal singers of all time.
Yeah. I amend myself. Apparently, it's social studies. Is his Bachelor of Arts degree from Harvard. Tom Morello.
Big respect for Tom Morello. Love that man.
Mm-hmm.
Well, today we are going to talk about birth name Kimitake Hiraoka. And he will change his name later in this episode. Some people will know him by that name. But on January 14th, 1925, Kimitake Hiraoka was born in Tokyo, Japan. His family made decent money. His father, Azusa, was the deputy director of the Bureau of Fisheries. But Kimitake's grandfather, Jotaro, like from the Bizarre Adventure, had incurred severe debts during his life drinking and playing Go that the family had a really hard time working themselves out of. But even despite that debt, they lived in a pretty comfortable life in a 2-story Tokyo house with 6 maids. They were probably not paying these maids, just to be clear. They were not like shelling out that kind of money. It was a room and board kind of thing that maids very often worked for in Japan in this time. Still doing pretty well if you can afford to feed 6 extra people.
Certainly.
I've heard that 1920s and 1930s imperialist Japan was a very nice place to be a maid in.
It only gets nicer. His mother, Shizue, was an educated woman, growing up as the daughter of a middle school principal. Shizue and Azusa lived upstairs, while his grandmother, Natsu, Azusa's mother, lived downstairs. When Kimitake was still under 2 months old, his domineering grandmother, Natsu, more or less claimed him as her own. She lived with the family in a downstairs room, but insisted she be the one to instill within him the principles and beliefs that would shape him. Kind of showing herself as a my way or the highway type person with parenting. You can either help do it my way, or you're not involved in his life.
Excellent.
At least as
It
much
sounds
as
like aggressive.
she was very aggressively controlling over him, despite the fact it wasn't even her house. According to Shizue, Natsu had a buzzer installed in her room that she would ring every 4 hours when it was time to breastfeed Kimitake. Like morning, day, or night. Quote,
So she took over early.
Very fucking early. Quote, mother would stand over me while Kimitake nursed, timing him on a pocket watch she always carried. When the time was up, she would snatch him away and take him back downstairs to her room. I would lie in bed wishing I could hold Kimitake and feed him to his heart's content.
That's awful.
That's fucking terrible.
Yeah.
For everyone other than her.
Yeah.
She kept him almost as a prisoner in her room, keeping her company and keeping him away from others that would raise him in a way that she didn't permit, ostensibly to keep him safe.
I'm glad he's going to have such a healthy upbringing.
Oh, yeah. This is the healthiest individual I'm ever going to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
When Kimitake was 2, he tried to climb up the stairs and fell backwards, and he hit his head on the way down, and it started bleeding. And he ended up being totally fine, but As some people may know, head wounds bleed like a motherfucker, even if they're not that bad.
Mhm. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And he was only 2 years old, so they brought him to the hospital. Natsu didn't show up right at the same time as everyone else. She was at the theater at the time and showed up late. And she asked Azusa as soon as she got there, "Is he dead?" And when she was told he was still alive, as soon as they went home, she took him back to her room and locked herself in with him. And from this point onward, Kimitake was forbidden from going upstairs in the family home without her permission, isolating him even further from his parents.
Good lord.
That's so tragic.
Natsu's kind of a fucking monster. So very emotionally and mentally controlling and manipulative. Sometimes Shizue would try to take him outside, even though everyone had to seek permission to take him outside. Quote, "When it was bright outside but dark and damp in the house, I would quietly try to take him out for some air and to expose him to some sunlight. Mother would suddenly wake and forbid me to move outside, forcing me back to the dark, gloomy room, its sliding doors closed up where her sickbed lay." Fucking terrible.
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Around his 5th birthday, Kimitake went into a coma and he was diagnosed with auto-intoxication, and things were looking bad enough that Shizue gathered the toys she intended to bury with him. He ended up recovering fully within a week, but for the next year, he was regularly hospitalized about once a month with similar attacks. But the condition vanished when he started going to school.
Also,
By
like you kind of have to leave one room.
Yeah, it's kind of good for you when you get out of a room.
And for kids to like play and run.
Yeah.
Crazy.
By this point, he's only allowed to go out of the house with his mother and no maids if it's a sunny, windless day. And well into the month of May, he has to wear a winter coat and a face mask.
Good lord.
Shizue complained that the minute I tried to sneak him out while Mother dozed, she would wake up, confine him to the house, and lead him back into her room, where the shutters were always closed. As Kimitake's mother, there were so many things I wanted to do for him, but my plans were always thwarted. She curated the friends that he was allowed to have. His only allowed friends were 3 older girls that she handpicked from amongst his cousins. And even with girls being seen as gentler playmates than boys, Kimitake and the girls had to be extra quiet because Natsu constantly complained that her sciatica made her sensitive to noise.
Of course.
Anything metal was forbidden as a toy because of the clanging noise it might make. And from a young age, Kimitake learned to internalize his feelings and just deal with it, because any disobedience from him was seen as preference for his mother, and then Natsu took it out on both of them.
No, at least he's healthily bottling it up.
Yeah, exactly. He got really good at the gray stone technique, which, Raya, I imagine you could probably explain better than I could. Gray rock?
Yeah, it's gray rocking, where you just give nothing. You give nothing. It is in response. It can be like maladaptive. It usually is maladaptive. It can also be like adaptive to like somebody who's wronged you. Yeah, you just give them nothing. You act like you're a rock.
And I think this is pretty solidly a maladaptive case.
It is adaptive in that like he's not doing it to harm anybody. He's doing it to like protect himself.
Yeah. And his mother.
And his mother. Oh my gosh.
It's always good when the
I'm
child
ready to go
has
fight
to
this
protect the
woman.
mother.
Yeah.
And
Don't worry.
She was in
Natsu's not the
1914,
only one
so-
you're going to want to fight.
I have good
I'll-
news. You'll probably win.
Yeah, she's
I
an
wish
old
somebody had
Japanese
fodder.
woman.
wish somebody had fodder.
She's also a little bit dead at this point.
Yeah, she can't handle loud noises. As soon as you let out a battle
Neither
cry,
can
she's
I.
incapacitated.
Neither can I, but I'm not kidnapping children.
Yeah, that's true. So Natsu regularly started fights with Azusa and Shizue over how they raise their son. And very often after a fight, Azusa would take Kimitake out for a walk. And this is where we get a lot of examples of how he wanted to raise a strong, manly boy. And
good.
we get a good example of him gray rocking on one of these walks when he's 5 years old. And this is a quote from Azusa, who I'm stunned talks about some of these things as proudly as he does. Quote, "We came to a railroad crossing just as a steam engine was roaring down the tracks toward us, belching black smoke and making a terrific racket. There was a fence separating us from the tracks, but the engine passed so close you could touch it if you put out your hand. I thought to myself, here's a perfect chance for Spartan training. I lifted Kimitake and, shielding his face with my hat, held him out towards the engine and said, "Are you scared? Don't worry, and if you cry like a weakling, I'll throw you in a ditch." As I spoke, I looked down at Kimitake's face and was astonished to see there was no reaction. I waited for the next train and tried again, but the result was the same, no effect. Was he like a puppy, I wondered, too young to know fear? The next day I came back and tried with a quieter train, but Kimitake's face was the same mask as before. So his dad is just taking him to the train tracks and holding him up to trains.
I don't like him either.
No. I also don't know why this is supposed to be like a manly thing. Like you just stand close to a train?
I'm not sure what parenting book he's reading out of, but I think it might not be a parenting book.
I'm not sure it's much better than Natsu's.
No.
In April 1931, Kimitake entered first grade at the school of his grandmother's choosing, of course, and had a very hard time fitting in. Having been shuttered indoors for much of his life, he had a pretty frail body, and having only socialized with girls, he had a really hard time fitting in with the boys. And so he was the subject of a lot of bullying. They called him a lot of names like Asparagus Child, Snake Belly, or Pale Blue because of him rarely going outside.
I imagine some of those names are a little bit more like culturally, like
yeah, probably
some basis in culture. Because like Asparagus Child, that I don't know why that makes sense.
I mean, in the test run, that killed.
Did it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Different strokes. But here's a quote about one of these nicknames from the biography Persona. When a prankster once challenged him, "Hey, Pale Blue, your ball's gotta be pale blue too." Thereupon, he unbuttoned his pants and pulled out his stuff and pressed it on the boy, making him cringe.
Well, all right then.
Why would he not run away? Why would he just stand there and let him do that? I don't know.
It did end the fight, so
that's true.
He was no longer being bullied.
I mean, we don't know that, but at least not in that instance.
That interaction ended it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Kimitake repeatedly missed time during first grade with a recurring lung infection. So, all the better for his health, Natsu got him excused from the school's phys ed program and started restricting his diet in a way that kept him from eating and socializing with anyone in the school cafe.
Oh, good.
He was also banned from... Yeah, no reason to be worried now. Natsu's taking care of him.
I thought that he might have some social issues from being isolated, but she fixed it.
Well, you'll be pleased to know he was also banned from participating in school field trips.
Good, good.
By his grandmother?
Yeah, by his grandmother.
Okay.
The first known piece of writing from Kimitake was a poem that he wrote in second grade that described how he wanted to go to Enoshima with his classmates and dreamed of it when he went to bed. In 1934, Kimitake enters fourth grade, and his family moved down the street to a pair of nearby houses. In one home stayed Azusa, Shizue, and two of their children, and in the other, Jotaro, Natsu, and Kimitake lived. They lived about 3 houses away from each other. They stayed in these separated homes for 3 years, during which time Kimitake was frequently forbidden from visiting his parents for days at a time and was never allowed to stay for dinner.
Good lord.
Shizue took him to and from school. Sometimes he could stay for an hour while reciting his lessons, but otherwise, as always, he kind of belonged to Natsu. And as her sciatica got worse and her kidneys started to struggle, Kimitake was the one who did most of the work taking care of her. She'd only take her medicine from him, he sponged her brow when she was particularly ill, and he helped her get to the bathroom. But it wasn't just her physical health that she put in his hands, she also demanded he take care of her mental health. She'd often demand that he comfort her when her pain was particularly bad, and on one occasion she held a knife to her throat, demanding comfort or else she'd kill herself.
What a manipulative bitch.
Yeah.
I can't with how much I just despise this woman.
You shouldn't.
I would say that I have concerns, but I have very little other than concerns at the moment.
So we breezed past
It's
concerns
the only thing you have.
minutes ago.
It was in March 1937 that Shizue and Azusa finally regained their boy and Natsu relinquished control, because she was an ill 62-year-old woman and Jotaro spent a year trying to convince her to make it happen. The Hiriokas and their 3 kids moved into their own home away from the family elders, and for the first time, Kimitake was out from underneath his grandmother's thumb with his own room.
He probably didn't know how to
Amazing.
function with that.
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah.
How old is
So,
he at this point?
1937, 15.
Okay.
14, 15. Editor's note, I was a stupid dummy who did math wrong. He was 12 at the time. So, we've got a good outlook on one of the people who raised him, Natsu. And we've got one story on Azusa. And I'm going to tell you a little more about how Azusa started taking control when Natsu no longer had control. And again, direct quote from him. A parent has to apply pressure. You squeeze and you squeeze, and any child that collapses is better off dead.
Uh-huh. This is good.
This
At
is
least it's going to be
Big
smooth
upgrade.
sailing. Yeah, but it's 1937. It's going to be smooth sailing for the next 10 years.
Yeah. So Kimitake had learned to entertain himself indoors because he kind of fucking had to. So even though the 12-year-old, even though the 14-year-old, 15-year-old at the time had gained the independence to go outside whenever he wanted, he often preferred to stay inside and read anyway, which does not conform to Azusa's goal of having a strong, manly son. So he would often just grab the book out of Kimitake's hands, confirm it was not an educational textbook, and then throw it across the room in a rage.
Healthy.
I mean, we crave what's familiar, even if it's not healthy for us. And he's been inside forever. Why would he go outside? Why would he start going outside when he's 15? So why would he start? He just know, he doesn't. That's scary.
And half the time he went outside, he was stuffed in winter clothing in the middle of spring.
There you go.
Azusa considered fiction stories and poetry to be lies and corruption, and not manly enough for his boy. Azusa also once told Kimitake that, quote, the practice of literature befits only the people of a degenerate nation. Wild quote.
I'm going to counter with a quote from, I think, Ursula Le Guin, who is like, we have a duty and an obligation to escape. Fiction is required, basically. I'm paraphrasing terribly here, but
it's a good counter.
It is a good counter.
I was immediately concerned when the phrase of, I don't remember exactly what you said, but it was something along the lines of, this is a good Spartan teaching moment.
Yeah.
Anyone that bases the parenting off of the Spartans is a bad parent.
Yes. And he kind of confirmed that when he held his boy up to a train.
To multiple trains.
Multiple trains for 2 days.
It was not a one-off thing.
So he urged his son to use his good head for something that'll do you some good and tried to push him towards a STEM field. Azusa also thought that liking cats was unmanly, so he abandoned the family cat far away from home.
Ugh.
Then
Why do people think that? There's such a weird, I want to get off on a tangent here, but there's such a weird thinking that having cats, liking cats or whatever is unmanly or effeminate, and I don't understand it enough to where we have less research on cat anatomy because of misogyny. It's crazy, actually. Hang on.
That tracks. I never thought about that, but it does make sense.
Yeah.
It's really weird.
There's the fucking obsession with, dogs are a manly pet and cats are a womanly pet.
Yeah, it's so strange. Because
get that.
They're not, there's no different. It doesn't matter. Anyway, sorry, I'm off track.
Animals.
And he makes sure to one-up himself on that, because Kimitake brought another cat home, and Azusa figured that if that cat died, he would be too encouraged to get another one. Discouraged. And so he poisoned it with iron powder and also called that Spartan education.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty fucking
Why
terrible.
is he obsessed with Spartans? Is that a thing at the time?
It's not the worst thing he's obsessed with.
Yeah.
I hate that response.
So fortunately for Kimitake, Azusa's involvement to this degree was pretty short-lived. He got a promotion. Yes, go ahead.
Real quick, this is 1930, so this is well into the period of Japanese westernization and the ideal of we need to form a strong nation with the basis of Europe as our goal so we can resist their imperialization. So focusing on the strength of the Spartans is not that weird for this time.
Right.
Gotcha.
Anyways, continue.
Yes. So Azusa got promoted in January 1938, and his promotion required that he move west to Osaka. But Shizue was ill, and Natsu demanded that kids not leave school. So for the next 4 years, Azusa was barely in the same home as his wife and kids. And now, Kimitake is allowed to read and write in his own room in privacy for the first time. Azusa kind of knew this was happening, but when he was home less than 1 week a month and lived in a completely different city, he really didn't have the ability to enforce his will all that much.
Right.
So Kimitake joined his school's writing club, and he created an article, 6 Poems on Autumn, and it got published in the December issue of his school's magazine. The next issue published more of his poems in a short story, and in 1940, at 15 years old, Kimitake became the literary club's youngest ever member of the editorial board, and in 1941 became the editor. So
Good for him.
Good for him. Really turned around once he actually can do these things.
Mm-hmm.
Having something for himself for like probably the first time in his life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something to be proud of.
And then his father poisoned it with iron shavings.
So, Natsu, obviously a fucking terrible person. We cannot say that enough. Fuck Natsu. But she did have one positive impact on Kimitake, and that was her love of theater. Anytime she came home, she would talk about it. She would bring him souvenirs all the time. And after they no longer lived in the same house, as a way to keep in touch with each other and bond, she would often take him to kabuki theater. And once he started going, Kimitake would go to see kabuki theater at least once a month for the rest of his life.
So he got exposed to some like culture.
He got a little bit of culture,
interesting stories and things. Like that's at least there's that. That probably was helpful on some degree, I would imagine.
Yeah. She wasn't just a domineering monster, only mostly a domineering monster.
I mean, it still was, but...
So in January 1939, Natsu passes. And Kimitake did not react much when he was told this, and would never talk or write about Natsu other than describing himself as a grandma's boy. Which didn't really seem to be his choice.
No. He was, but it was not.
Was.
Yeah.
In 1941...
It wasn't the healthiest of relationships.
No, absolutely not.
It was a thing that happened, though.
In 1941, Kimitake's mentor, Fumio Shimizu, invited him to serialize a story in a magazine with academic critics. And he was the first student ever invited to do so. And it was also the first instance that fiction was ever included in the magazine. And this is when Kimitake Hirioka adopted his pen name that would define him more than his birth name, and what we're going to call him from now on, Yukio Mishima. The first story that he wrote under the name Yukio Mishima was A Forest in Full Flower, and it was absolutely raved about, giving him legitimacy and got him regular work for that magazine. And he mostly adopted his pen name so that Azusa didn't find out about his writing. And he was constantly worried that he would face a lot of shit if he did. Quote, "Where my writing is concerned, he is the embodiment of every imaginable handicap."
Oof.
In 1941, Azusa retires from civil service, and he came home from Osaka permanently, and now Mishima can't hide his writing. Unfortunately, Azusa wasn't content to just urge his son to change. Again, in his own words, which by this point, you know, means we're going to hear something fucking terrible. His strategy was to immediately adopt a countermeasure, a policy of search and seize.
Of course he did.
Frequently entered Mishima's room, self-describing as forcibly entering, and he destroyed whatever writing he was working on. According to Shizue, Mishima was often too upset to rewrite the stories, ruining them for good. So he started bringing his writing with him to school or entrusting them to friends for safekeeping.
Oof.
Children who grow up, mental health perspective here. Children who grow up under like strict parents that are too strict without a lot of like care and warmth, will be very creative about defying those parents. Almost always. Your kid will defy you if you are overly strict. That is just true across the board.
I convinced my parents that the school did not mail my report card properly for like 3 weeks once.
Heck yeah.
So my mother lived in a terrible household, and her father made the decision that it would be bad if she was too smart, so she was only allowed to read one book every month. But she did have a library membership, and they were free. So she got into the habit of checking out multiple books and then just moving the. She always picked ones that had dust covers on the outside, so she could swap them between the books and just read different books all the time. And her father never found out because he was a massive
that's so
idiot.
clever. That's so clever
Oh, yeah.
because strict parents breed innovative children, not in a good way. They will defy whatever they need to do to like get by. Oh my gosh.
So,
but anyway,
we have alluded to the time frame and location of our main character. We're intersecting with World War II already, even though I haven't talked about it.
Oh, wait. We are in 1941 Japan.
Yes.
That doesn't sound right.
So, by this point of the story, the war had already started to turn away from Japan. And as it does, death only becomes more of a factor in his writing and his thinking. Eventually, Mishima would refer to this time frame as the only time in my experience when death was a right and an intoxicating blessing. He came to appreciate the work of Raymond Radiguet in his novel Le Bal du Comte d'Orgel. If that's bad French, I don't give a shit. Radiguet died shortly after finishing that novel at the age of 20, and Mishima reflected on how poetic the timing was, saying he had been consumed by his own brilliance.
I did want to remark that, absolutely wonderful thing that he was voted to be head of the club and all this at such a young age. But he was being voted as the youngest ever, all this, at a time when all of the people who were even mildly capable of serving in the military would have been serving in the military.
Yep. And that does come up pretty soon.
Yep.
In 1944, he graduates from school at the head of his class, and as per tradition, he was awarded a silver watch by the emperor personally. And from this point on, he kind of starts to favor the imperial throne. The next month after that, his first book gets published, which is an incredible achievement in 1944 Japan, because they were in the middle of war rationing, and you had to petition the government to get paper. So it's kind of a huge fucking deal that he manages to get a book published as a new author in this time.
That is really amazing.
Good for him.
His pride reflected his feelings on the aforementioned author Radiguet, who died early, saying, "Now I was ready to die." He held a party with his friends to celebrate the publication of his first book, and of course, Azusa refused to show up.
Of course.
You can't let him have anything.
No, absolutely not. So Azusa keeps pushing for Mishima to pursue a more useful career, leading him to go to the Imperial University to study German law.
It's really not enough for you to be recognized by the emperor when you graduate. You need to do more.
Yeah. And, Azusa said, "No matter how hard you searched the family tree, there wasn't a single performer or author to be found. This gave me the advantage. I forced Kimitake into the study of law, and I should say into the most orthodox branch of law, German law, because I desperately wanted to tear him away from literature once and for all."
I bet there weren't a whole lot of German attorneys in that family tree either, my guy.
Probably not, no. This is where I'm going to say Azusa kind of had a love affair with Nazis. He was always reading about Nazis.
Clearly.
And he kept telling Kimitake that he wanted him to learn about Nazis. So when I said before that wasn't the most worst thing he was obsessed with, yeah, dude had a love affair with Nazis.
Yeah, again, not uncommon for the time, and also weirdly not entirely uncommon now, but yeah, concerning.
I mean, he's playing into some heavy tropes here. Abusive father who is into Nazis,
and hates book learning.
Come on, and hates book learning.
So this did not do anything to tear Mishima away from literature. His class had barely any lessons at all before they were pretty much subjected to part-time conscription and assigned to work in an airplane factory. And this is where Mishima took advantage of his sickly adolescence and started faking illness to get out of physical labor, so that he got put into an office job where he was able to write and afterward have all day after work to look into his writings. In 1944, he was called to perform his physical for the draft, and he had a pretty piss poor showing. There were about 100 potential draftees who came together to see if they could lift a rice bag over their heads. It was about 97 pounds. Most could, but Mishima could only barely get his off the ground, and he recalled the examiner sneering at him. There was...
This is what happens when you raise a person in one room.
Yes. There was one attendee known as Fumai who said it was as if his rice bag was glued to the ground, but he did not recall the examiner sneering at Mishima. That might have been a figment of his imagination. Mishima did pass the written and oral parts of the exam, and he was placed in second class B, the lowest rank of draft-eligible citizenry. And it's interesting that Azusa did kind of try to help him get out of this, despite wanting to raise a manly Spartan boy. He had him go take this exam out in the countryside, where he thought that Mishima would look all the more frail and weak next to big, strong country farm boys.
Okay. I get that.
If he's not going to be the best, he might as well not be in it at all.
That tracks. He would be a much better German lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's fair.
In 1945, Mishima finished a novel called The Middle Ages, which he referred to as his last novel, and he waited to get drafted into the war effort. He would later recall himself at age 20 as a genius destined for an early death. And in February 1945, the man with the pen name Yukio Mishima received his draft notice to join the Imperial Japanese Army. He reported for duty, received his checkup, the doctor listened to his chest, and rejected him as unfit for service due to possible advanced tuberculosis. He was later re-examined in Tokyo, and it was proposed to be a misdiagnosis. In the opinion of his brother Chiyuki, Mishima may have gotten the sympathy of the doctor for being a frail, pale, thin man that would probably not survive the army life, or at least do very poorly in it.
But this is also the time where, like, tuberculosis, like, there's a look to tuberculosis, right? That you can kind of tell.
Yeah.
And he probably had it because he's so frail.
I mean, probably, yeah.
He's also a little bit obsessed with dying a little bit early, huh?
Yep.
I'm concerned about this. I'll be honest.
So after his checkup, Mishima gets shuffled into an out room where a speaker told every other rejected candidate to remember their duty to sacrifice themselves for the emperor, even if not at the front. And Azusa was absolutely thrilled that he had his boy not go into the army. Which, again, this will always be fascinating to me. With the way he raised him, you would think he would want his boy to be a good army boy.
Yeah, like, to this point, he sounds like that stereotypical army dad, or, like, not army dad, but the one that, like, idolizes the army and wants their kid to go be all they can be.
Right.
Right up till now.
But in his words, the moment we stepped out of the gate, I grabbed my son by the hand and we started to run blindly. We were so fast, we truly ran. I no longer remember what the distance was, but it was considerable. And all the way, we kept turning back to look. We were mortally afraid that a soldier might run after us and bark, "That was a mistake! Your rejection was canceled! You passed fine! Congratulations!" Gradually, joy brimmed up in me, and I didn't know what to do with it.
You should hold your son in front of a train.
Yeah. That'll make up for him not being in the army. Hold him up to enough trains and they gotta take him.
Mm-hmm.
If he said that during his checkup, if he was like, I can get really close to a train without freaking out, they might have taken him.
Yeah.
So, being such a fantastic dad, Azusa did not actually remember how Mishima reacted. And he was very surprised later when Shizue told him that as soon as he got home, Mishima told her that he wished he passed the checkup, was sent to the front, and put into a kamikaze unit.
Oof.
That boy desperate for death. Oh my god.
Yeah.
And so there's
the Emperor.
a very interesting resource that we have in Mishima's past, and that's what's called an I novel. And that's a typically Japanese novel where the main character exists as a self-insert of the author to kind of describe parts of their own life, but the main character is not explicitly the author. So you can kind of use these a lot of the time to guess and figure out what someone might have been thinking or feeling in similar events in their lives to what happens in the book, but it is still predominantly a work of fiction. And so we can kind of cross-reference this to things that happened in his life to try to guess at what he felt. And so the first I novel he wrote was Confessions of a Mask, which I leaned on quotes from this a lot to try to guess at his motivations. And in Confessions of a Mask, the main character was put into the draft and lied up to the doctor about a series of ailments and illnesses to get excused from service, and then wondered afterwards why they were so excited about it. The character said that their life would never reach the heights that could justify having escaped death in the army, but then the same character later said he found himself deeply immersed in a desire for death, and it was in death that he discovered his life's aim. So, we look at the writings of his early life, and he seems to have fixated on death a lot, as you said, expected it, and maybe even kind of hoped for it. So you would think that maybe he would have wanted to get into the army. But then you look at this novel, Confessions of a Mask, and you have a character who lied about it. You have the real person who may have been misdiagnosed with TB. It's hard to tell to what degree, he may have influenced these results or how he actually felt about it. I find this dispute kind of fascinating.
Absolutely.
At the very least, he was very conflicted on the results.
Yeah, I mean, multiple things could be true. He could be feeling all of those things. And also, like, depression swings us back and forth pretty wildly. I'm making an assumption here based on somebody I do not know and cannot diagnose. But
I think based on everything Natsu did, calling depression is pretty fair.
Yeah. And who wouldn't be depressed with the level of trauma that he experienced over the course of his life? Yeah. But that is one of the criteria to diagnose depression is like thoughts around death, frequent thoughts around death.
And boy, are there a lot.
There are a lot.
One way or another, with or without Mishima, the war raged on until August 15, 1945, when Japan surrendered unconditionally to the Allied powers. Mishima and his family listened to the broadcast together, and when the emperor was done speaking, Azusa turned to him and said, "Now we enter an age of culture, so if you really want to be a writer, go ahead." And then he changed his mind later, because of course he did.
Of course he did.
But
you can't let this boy have anything.
This does track, as he is basically assigning culture and writing and weakness to the Western powers, and strength and manliness and not writing to Japan. So we have lost to the cultural people. You can now go be cultural. Does track as a line of thinking.
That's fair. That's a good point. Mishima described his life's trajectory in the immediate fallout of the war as a sudden assault of unhappiness. First, his sister Mitsuko passed in October 1945. Initially, she was just diagnosed with a cold, but eventually she fell into a coma, and Mishima regurgitated food to her like a bird, but she did eventually pass. Then, also in the near post-war period, there was a woman he had been associating with who he expected to be engaged to, and then she left him and married someone else. But just alongside these things, he also felt the culture he lived in during the later years of the war aligned with his values more than any other part of his life. He wrote that it was a rare time when my personal nihilism and the nihilism of the age and of society at large perfectly corresponded. The end of the war brought along a lot of big cultural shifts that are honestly well beyond the scope of this episode. If you really want to understand the cultural changes in literature between late World War II Japan and post-World War II Japan, there's an entire podcast on that can say it way better than I can. But for our purposes, his writing style kind of fell out of style at the time, despite how brilliant he was seen to be shortly beforehand. Japanese culture took kind of a liberal shift that didn't gel as well with the kind of conservative Mishima. But more than that, the war and its after effects robbed him of a lot of his connections and mentors. Some from suicide, some from ostracization, and some just by the fact he did not keep a lot of very long friendships in his life. From the far future of this moment, he would think of the years following the war and declare, "I am astonished at their emptiness." So in 1947, he goes back to school and graduates with his law degree, and he's only writing at night. His desire for expression could not be silenced, so every Saturday night he would leave the house at 8 with his brother Shiuki, and they'd go to a dance club until shortly before he graduated, when Azusa insisted he take the higher civil service exam to qualify for high-level bureaucratic jobs, at which point Mishima excused himself from the social group, only very rarely joining them from then on to go dancing.
I do have to ask.
Yes.
In the post-World War II setting, did he continue to pursue German law? Because that may have been a mistake.
No. I do not believe so.
Well, that's
but
good.
I'm not entirely sure. I do know that he does not end up using it. He ends up
Always says
passing
that.
the civil service exam, and he got appointed to the National Savings Department of the Ministry of Finance's Banking Bureau. Not a lot of German law involved in that.
Generally not.
At the Ministry of Finance, he was barely sleeping while he worked there. He would wake up early, go to work, and then he would write late into the night. A few of his coworkers knew about his writing career, so at one point they asked him to write a speech for the Minister of Finance, and he returned the draft, calling it far too elaborate. He likes his flowery words.
Apparently.
After 9 months on the job, Mishima resigned, surprisingly with Azusa's blessing. They knew that he was going to work really tired, and so one day shortly after he leaves, he came right back home and said that he fell onto the train tracks, almost falling asleep while he waited for his train and almost got run over by a train.
Oh my.
And that was enough for Azusa to finally say, then quit the job and become a novelist, but make very sure you become the best novelist in the land. And then he abandoned what he called his 100-year plan.
100-year plan?
100-year plan.
Yeah, it's remember the line earlier about there not being any lawyers in the family tree? He was like scanning the family tree going back generations and trying to use it to shape and like manipulate Mishima's life.
Oh,
that was what he called his 100-year plan, was like looking back at the family tree and trying to use it to like create the future, I guess.
What a nerd.
Huh.
But you know what's better is I feel like that would insult him more than almost any other like jab you could come up with.
Yeah.
So Mishima resigns the next day, September 13th, 1948. While he was working at the Ministry of Finance, he had published 12 stories. And after quitting, his first one was due to be published his first novel was due to be published in a couple of months. Confessions of a Mask got published in 1949 and became a bestseller, and he was recognized by critics as a brilliant writer, even if they didn't actually give a shit about the work itself. There was one critic who previously disliked him. They had like a out of 100 score, and he gave him like a 10 or something, like a really low score, and then ended up writing an article later calling Mishima the hope of 1950. Was eventually
He's really changing hearts and minds.
Yeah, right? And Azusa called Confessions of a Mask preposterous nonsense, but even he got won over once Mishima started to get famous, and he started to brag about his famous son and act like his agent.
I'm not surprised by that.
No, absolutely
not one little bit. No.
Shocked. Truly shocked.
Every morning, the neighbors saw Azusa run outside to burn Mishima's discarded manuscripts unless it was raining. It was his idea, not Mishima's, so that nobody would grab them and sell them later. A very important part of Confessions of a Mask was Mishima exploring his sexuality, and as part of his preparation, he visited a psychologist to explore his, quote, perverse tendencies and get their opinion on them, and he was very excited about this.
Okay.
So he ended up explaining this to a friend who said that Mishima then followed up by talking about homosexual literature, ancient and modern, in the East and the West. In 1950, Mishima starts hanging out at Brunswick, a gay bar that sprung up after the war to cater to foreign soldiers, and sometimes he'd do a bar crawl of gay bars, often ending up at Brunswick as the last one. He said that he was gathering material for his new book, Forbidden Colors, and he always went with a friend, insisting he was afraid to go alone, and once he was there, he would make himself out to be an observer. But I think we all got an idea of what he's doing on these gay bar crawls.
No. He's very butch. I get it. It's fine.
Forbidden Colors dealt with homosexual exploration, and a 21-year-old college student named Fukushima Jiro was blown away by it, discovering some new things about himself. Fukushima would actually seek out Mishima's home and visit him himself to ask about the location of one of the gay bars described in the book, and that was when Mishima went, as it happens, I'm about to go there, so you want to go with me? And then they would regularly visit the bar together once in a while, and sometimes a hotel room.
Cute.
This is
you
also...
know that it's repressive when, in order to find a good gay bar, you have to seek out your favorite author and ask them.
Yeah. So this is
that
a point where there's a story that I heard before starting work on this in earnest, and I could not track it down again. So I cannot verify the reality of this, but it's too good of a story not to share. Supposedly, there was a man that Mishima met at one of these gay bars, and they thought they were going to hook up. And then on 3 separate occasions, Mishima took the guy back to his house and then acted out an elaborate death ritual with swords and red ribbons where he would pretend to kill himself, and then he would orgasm without the other guy ever touching him at the point where he died, and they would tell him to go home.
Okay, so he would be acting out scenes.
Uh-huh. The guy said something to the effect of, like, it didn't feel like he wanted anything to do with me. He just wanted someone to see this thing that he'd made.
So
yeah, he did.
This whole fixation with death that we were talking about.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Definitely very fixated on death.
Mm-hmm.
Fixated is certainly a word to use.
It definitely is a word. Mishima was always on time, always known for being on time. He never missed a deadline in his entire career. Sometimes he would tell his editor months in advance the exact hour that he would turn in his work, and he would always be there at that exact hour with his finished manuscript. In 1951, Mishima left Japan for the first time, going to visit America, looking to expand his horizons. He spent a day in San Francisco, a day in LA, and 10 days in New York City. Before he went to New York, a friend of his sent word ahead to the American Committee for Cultural Freedom, and they had someone named Mrs. Kruger who was appointed to be his guide around the city, and she brought him to various landmarks and tried to convert him to socialism.
Excellent.
As guides often do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It did not take.
I imagine not. Is this also, what year is it, the 50s? Is this
51.
not the Red Scare in New York?
I feel like it's just before the
Close
Red
to?
Scare.
Okay.
It's definitely very close.
I'm not well versed on history of that era, but like,
I'm going to say there was definitely a lot of
feels-
anti-communist sentiment, but I don't think we were like in the height of it or like where it started to ramp up yet. I don't think people were getting blacklisted from Hollywood yet.
I think the ramping was mid to late 50s.
Yeah, I think so.
Mistaken.
Gotcha. Okay.
I don't imagine Miss Kruger was doing all that well in 10 years.
No.
Maybe not.
New York City was too much for Mishima. He said, New York is like Tokyo 500 years from now. And now Tokyo is like New York 500 years from now.
Yeah.
I've heard that actually, that like, that Tokyo has like grown so much.
Mm-hmm.
After New York City, Mishima went to Brazil for Carnival, and this is where he really started to explore himself. His guide in Rio de Janeiro was a guy named Mogi, and Mogi was surprised by his unabashed homosexuality, saying that Mishima frequently brought 17-ish-year-old boys to his hotel. Mogi did not understand how he managed to feel out who would be willing, and Mishima said that in that world, there was an understanding between people beyond words. Mogi also said that
Your
Mishima...
gaydar.
Yeah, gaydar. That's exactly what he's talking about. There just wasn't a word for it yet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mogi also said that Mishima expressed an interest in courtship and female psychology, but had absolutely zero interest in women beyond that. At one point, a Japanese woman tried to seduce Mishima, and he started calling Mogi, panicking, asking him to rescue him.
Gay panic.
Before Carnival took place, he visited a group of Japanese coffee farmers in Sao Paulo who insisted that Japan won World War II. After Carnival, Mishima went to Paris, and he got scammed by a guy who offered to exchange his yen for francs at a discounted rate, and then just took his traveler's checks and ran. And so he was stuck in Paris for a month with no money while the Japanese legation sorted it out. In the meantime, he got directed to a Japanese boarding house where he met a few other Japanese creatives and with whom he visited, quote, a bar for pederasts. His friend got all of the attention at the pederasty bar because he spoke French, which Mishima was very salty about.
Okay. I mean, they're in France.
Yeah.
When in France?
Yeah.
They're in France.
Or anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Mishima hated Paris. He referred to the so-called beauty of Paris as the thick makeup of an ugly woman.
Oof.
He wrote his first play while he was in Paris, then he went to London, uneventfully there, before his last stop was in Greece, where he visited Delphi and found himself inspired by the last leg of his trip before returning to Japan. Quote, Greece cured my self-hatred and my loneliness and awoke in me a will to health. And as soon as he got home, he enrolled in Greek language classes.
Sounds like Dad's
Honestly,
getting what he wanted. He's got a homosexual son who is really into Greece.
Many such cases. Thanks, Percy Jackson. I feel like if I were depressed and I went to Greece for a period of time, that would probably also cure my depression. It's like sending Victorian women to the coast to cure what ails them, to cure their hysteria. I feel like
The
I would be
salty
cured if
ocean
I went to
waves will be good
Greece.
for your health, my lord.
I feel like a month in the Mediterranean, or however long you said, it would also cure what ails me.
So I'm going to paint a picture here.
Oh, yeah.
He had a particular sense of style when he got back from the West. He is described in Mishima, a biography, as wearing loud sports shirts, often alohas, black peg trousers, and pointy black shoes. He wore the shirts open halfway to the waist to expose his chest. Around his neck, he hung a golden chain and a variety of medallions. He was never without dark glasses, and literally to top it off, he affected a crew cut.
Become the stereotype.
Certainly. He's committed.
Yeah. If you're going to do it hard.
Yeah. This is also when he started to get himself in shape. In a couple of months, he learned how to swim. And the next 2 years, he took boxing class once a week. He would have taken boxing longer, but he was really bad at it and got his ass beat so much that his friends begged him to stop. He stopped for about 4 years and then got his ass beat repeatedly again and hung up his gloves. In 1955, he started lifting, working out 3 times a week for the next 15 years, making his first task when staying in a new city to be finding a gym. And once in 1956, he was late to meet a friend, sending an editor ahead to explain that he was, quote, detained by bodybuilding. His push to be more athletic was partly a response to his early years as a sickly child, looking to make himself as healthy as possible. He later described himself as having an intense physical inferiority complex. But he was also worried that he was becoming a schizophrenic and wanted to anchor himself to reality with the ultimate verification of existence, wishing to push his sense of self beyond just language. What he wanted was, quote, the language of the flesh. But also his peers noted that he totally skipped leg day.
Okay.
It was just upper body. He was just vanity muscles.
I'm shocked.
The description of him a few years later would say that he has, quote, spindly legs that seem too meager to support the developed torso. And by the time the early 60s rolled around, he'd start hosting bodybuilding parties, where he invited his gym bros over to talk about lifting, and then they'd strip down to their underwear, oil each other up, and pose for a photographer that he paid for. Mm-hmm. You know, just homie stuff.
The least gay thing I've ever heard.
just homie stuff.
That's just bros being bros.
I'm sure that a couple people we know regularly get home from the gym and then oil each other up and take pictures while talking about lifting.
They'd have to.
I mean, Sev might.
On January 14th, 1955, Yukio Mishima turned 30. He invited some friends over and informed them that he was now too old to die beautifully, and suicide after 30 was unseemly. I'm not remotely familiar with Japanese writing, but he showed his friends that the proper way to write his name with particular pronunciation made it include the words, devil bewitched by death. But he made clear around this time period that, quote, I dislike human beings who commit suicide.
Still very fixated.
Very fixated on death when he's literally writing his name to include it.
Writing it to include it, I do love the suicide after 30 is unseemly. You have to die by suicide very young, or it's not chic.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. He doesn't want to be one of those after 30 posers.
Dying at 50 is so not in vogue.
Trigger warning. Don't die by suicide. Please. Yep. I'm begging. Yep.
And if you must, don't make it based on your age.
Just don't at all.
Don't at all, but yeah.
Just don't.
In 1956, Mishima published The Temple of the Golden Pavilion, which sold 155,000 copies in just 2 months. And he was quickly becoming one of Japan's most famous authors. And the next year, he'd have his first Broadway production, an adaptation of his book, 5 Modern No Plays. He set everything up, wrote the adaptation, and handed off to 2 guys with no experience writing plays, a part-time novelist named Keith Botsford, and a college football star, Charles Schultz, not the Peanuts guy. Then he went on a trip to the Caribbean and Mexico before returning to find that Botsford and Schultz had done basically nothing. They had no director, no backers, and no cast, even though he had initially written, "The producer Keith is the leader of a boy gang, a fine Italian operetta troupe." I would like to refer to all opera groups in the future as boy gangs.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, isn't that what, like, boy bands are?
Kinda, yeah.
Yeah, I'm with it.
So he stays in New York for a few months, really hoping to see the play actually come to fruition, but his wannabe producers kept giving him the runaround about how they weren't making shit happen. And so eventually he just gives up and goes back home to Japan. After this, Mishima's parents start urging him to look for a wife, partly because Azusa heard rumors of him being gay and wanted to crush them. Wherever could he have heard that from?
It's a mystery.
Read your own child's book. Challenge failed.
So Azusa told alumni of Mishima's childhood school that he was single and looking. Only one of them caught his eye, a fan of one of his friends, a composer named Toshiro Mayuzumi. So Azusa had Toshiro ask the girl if she was interested in him, and she said she'd rather kill herself.
Hey, they've got
The perfect
similar
person for him.
interests.
Right? But Mishima really liked her picture, and he was really picky, so he arranged a quote-unquote chance meeting that he meticulously planned. He wandered into a Tokyo restaurant with an editor while Mayuzumi talked with the girl who was his friend, and then they had a, "Oh, hey, what are you doing here?" moment, got introduced to each other, and then Mishima suggested everyone have dinner together and then wander around the Latin Quarter together. The girl knew it was a setup, did not like this, and never spoke to him again.
Perfect.
Weird how girls don't like when you manipulate them.
Crazy.
Crazy.
In
He wouldn't know that,
1958,
though.
in a probably kind of arranged marriage, he married 19-year-old college student Yoko Sugiyama. Azusa had compiled a bunch of women's pictures, mostly that he went to school with, and he picked Yoko. And being such a famous guy, he was asked why he picked her, and he said, quote, "I prefer a round face because mine is elongated. If both of us have elongated faces like my parents do, it won't be good eugenically. That will produce a child like me. If someone with an elongated face comes to me as my wife on top of that, it will produce someone like a horse with a top hat."
Okay. Okay. I don't even know what to say on all that. We don't have time to unpack all that. We're gonna throw it away.
He doesn't want to have a horse kid. What's hard to comprehend about that? He can't have a woman with a long face.
Sure.
Why not?
If you must be arranging your marriage, at least it's for the most appropriate genetics. How very Nazi of you. Maybe you got that from your dad.
Yeah, the word eugenically being in there is a bit of a
heinous. A bit heinous.
The two families negotiated the marriage, and it nearly fell apart under Azusa's condition that Yoko can't go to college anymore and has to 100% be Mrs. Yukio Mishima. And Yoko's father disagreed until she ran to him in tears, saying she would kill herself if she couldn't have him. Which would have been very unseemly. He doesn't like people that do that. I don't think that would have. That probably would have crashed the whole thing.
It might have.
But it would also be on brand.
But she's also under 30, so I'm just pointing that out.
Yeah.
The two families refused to speak to each other at the wedding. They kind of fucking hated each other.
I wonder why.
Mishima and Yoko would have two kids. In 1959, there was a daughter, Noriko, and there was a son, Ichiro, in 1962. And as much of a traveling workaholic as Mishima was, he always made as much time as he could for his kids. And as far as I can tell, neither of them looked like a horse.
Well, that's good. See?
Always
Success.
a positive. A plan comes to fruition.
That round face, it was important.
Was important.
In 1958, Mishima took up kendo. He had done so in school as part of the school's fitness programs, but there was a significant difference in how he viewed it now than as a kid. When he was younger, he hated the noise, and he described martial arts shouts as, quote, "indescribably vulgar, barbarous, intimidating, shameless, nakedly physiological, anti-civil and anti-cultural, anti-rational, animalistic shouts."
I can only
And then he
imagine how
started
he
lifting
changed
weights.
after exactly this.
His thought now was, "I came to recognize on my own and tolerate for myself the shouts of Japan that lie at the base of my spirit. In these shouts is bluntly revealed that which modern Japan is ashamed of, tries desperately to hide. These are the shouts of the depth consciousness of the race that lurks and flows underneath the superficial modernization. That kind of monstrous Japan has been chained, left unfed for a long time, enfeebled and moaning, but he can shout out now, borrowing our mouse in the dojo for kendo. It's very Japan.
He's very Japan.
Yeah.
Also, a very
Yeah.
author thing to say. So wordy, so superfluous. I love it, actually.
He also said later that I practice kendo with a passion when I was able to discover some little sense and pleasure in being alive, only in the violent, fanatic shouts of the kendoist and the hiss of the bamboo sword. Reports are mixed on it, but he seems to have been rewarded more for his fame than his skill. One instructor who knew him said it didn't matter whether he was good or bad because his sword style was spiritually strong, and even though he was not actually at the rank of 5th Dan, eventually he would get there because he was so spiritually strong.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Another kendo fighter, one who was the model for a sword instructor in one Mishima story, said that to call him clumsy was an understatement and he did not even deserve 1 Dan.
I was gonna say, without ever seen this person, I feel like I could take him.
I feel like you could too.
With his spindly little legs.
Ultimately, Mishima would be practicing kendo Mondays and Fridays and bodybuilding Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. So dude kept busy. In 1960, Mishima had his first role as a movie star, playing as a gangster in and singing the theme song for the movie Windblown Dude, where he played as a freshly released convict avoiding a gang's vengeance for him killing the gang leader. He falls in love with a woman and tries, failing, to sneak her abortion pills. Then he realizes he does love the woman and her unborn child and is killed while getting them a gift. Because by this point, I think we could all fairly assume that, of course, he was going to die in this movie.
I would be shocked if he didn't.
Yeah.
The director was not a fan of his acting. He felt that he wasn't tender enough behind his gruffness, and there were constant reshoots that were always blamed on Mishima. Eventually, the director, referring to the one place he actually saw passionate acting, said, "You like to slap her so much, go ahead, slap away." To quote Mishima a biography, in the final version, there is scarcely an encounter between Mishima and his lady when he is not slapping her, sometimes tenderly on the back, but mostly gruffly in the face. His performance was considered to be bland.
The Sean Connery school of acting.
Yeah. He wrote around this time, I am sometimes tempted simply to join the self-defense forces or something. I'd hate to die of a disease or under an atomic bomb, but I wouldn't mind getting killed with a gun.
So fixated, oh my god.
Not just fixated, but fetishized.
Yes.
Also, yes. Good word usage.
In 1960, the renewal of the Japan-U.S. Security Treaty was top of mind for people across Japan. The people on the right supported it, wanting to get strong relations with the U.S., and the left strongly opposed it, feeling that they would just get dragged into America's wars. There were huge demonstrations across the country, and groups of supporters and protesters were clashing regularly. In June...
No, they'll definitely not get drug into any U.S. wars. That's not gonna happen.
When has that ever happened to anyone?
Yeah.
Name one time.
Yeah. In the 70s? Come on.
In June, a 10-year renewal of the security treaty was automatically passed, even though there were 300,000 protesters surrounding the prime minister's house demanding to repeal the treaty. There was apparently just some kind of thing in Japanese law where if there was no vote ruled on it, it would just automatically go through. And Mishima personally watched 300,000 people surround the prime minister's house from the roof of a building not far away, seeing the torches and hearing the songs of angry men. That October, the chair of the Japanese Socialist Party was assassinated by a right-winger known as Yamaguchi, who charged the speaker's platform with a short sword. Years later, Mishima was asked his thoughts on Yamaguchi and said, "Oh, he was splendid. As you know, he took his own life afterward. In dying that way, he was being faithful to the letter of Japanese tradition."
I could... Of course he said that. Of course he did.
Of course he did. Oh, the guy who killed himself? That guy was great.
Love that for him.
Most of my knowledge of post-war Japanese is like immediately post-World War II, but I do know that it was a roller coaster of just wild things and assassinations and suicides and just entirely weird.
Yeah. a lot of shit was going down here, and I might later do a whole separate episode for just like late 60s Japanese unrest, because a lot of shit went down.
Yeah.
Around this time, Mishima started to host an annual Christmas party with his longtime friends and close business associates, and I'm just going to let this passage speak for itself and what those parties were like. Quote, Mishima, who wore a white tuxedo, always seemed to grow manic as the evening progressed. One minute he would be singing Genie with the light brown hair in English alongside the piano. The next minute he would be growling and arching his back on the floor in an imitation of a dog treating a cat, or calling loudly for tequila, salt, and lemons and challenging his translator to see who could better imitate Marlon Brando drinking tequila and One-Eyed Jacks.
I'm glad that he wasn't on cocaine.
He might have just been crazy.
He might have.
I honestly think, based on earlier issues with him feeling alive, I think this is just a guy going through that exact same shit and just trying to find shit to make himself feel.
Yeah.
Could be. Yeah, fair.
Also avoidant. Like, sometimes we do things that are avoidant when we have trauma in our backgrounds.
And boy, does he.
And boy, does he. Also, we skated over it earlier, but I want to, like, poke at that a little bit. He also was worried that he had schizophrenia. Why? Who knows? But he was worried about it. And he's avoiding that fear too, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
In the early 60s, Mishima entered the world of modeling, on top of everything else, being the subject of various photo shoots. Hosoi Aiko arrived at Mishima's house in February 1961 to find the famous writer sunbathing shirtless, and he told him, "Today, I'm your subject. I won't mind whichever way you shoot me." And I wouldn't be surprised if he had nudies on the mind. In 1963,
it does sound like it.
It seems like it when he greets the guy like that and says that. In 1963, he was asked to pose as the picture for a Japanese encyclopedia entry on bodybuilding. And the same year, he would pose nude for a photographic study called Punishment by Roses that won the highest prize in Japanese photography. So we got famous author, playwright, actor, sang the theme song for a movie, and now he's a famous model.
There's a lot going on.
Yeah.
Your question is now becoming more apparent at you asked at the very beginning.
The rose punishment referred to in the title of the photographic study Punishment by Roses symbolized torture and never-ending slow death that ends in ascension to the dark sun. Because that's on brand.
Yeah. Tracks.
So the writer Hinuma Rintaro reviewed a lot of Mishima's work, and he noticed that the guy's writing about death a lot. And Rintaro himself was also kind of fixated on death, and did not help the situation. On multiple occasions, he asked Mishima, "Hey, when are you going to die?" He
so casual.
Was about the same age as Mishima, and he asked him this so often that when Hinuma died in 1968, Mishima's like, "Oh yeah, that guy definitely killed himself." Died of natural causes, but he was asking about death so much that Mishima just assumed there's no fucking way.
Mm-hmm.
And from this next passage, it's really hard to feel like Rintaro did not influence and cultivate this feeling a lot. I feel as though Mr. Hinuma and I only talked about death. When I think of it now, he had known, with an insight unique to someone near death, the dangers of the direction my literature is aiming toward, as if it were the palm of his hand. Whenever we met, he recommended that I commit suicide on the spot. He insisted, he urged that my committing suicide right now would be like Kirilov's logical death, and my literature would be perfected by that alone. Whenever they met.
That is a take. Yeah,
whenever
it's like, hey, buddy, have you considered killing yourself?
Have you considered killing yourself? Did they have any kind of relationship beyond friendship? Because
no, just he reviewed a lot of his books.
Okay.
And like, I just imagine like whenever they met, that means like they're out for dinner. He's like, "Hey, I'll pick up the check this time. Hey, thanks. You know what would make your books fucking perfect if you killed yourself right now?"
It does seem like I just happen to have bought all the first editions of your books. You maybe kill yourself. Just think out loud here.
In 1965, his book Patriotism got a film adaptation. And he himself, of course, would play a lieutenant for whom he wrote pages and pages of death sequences, thrusting himself back into thinking of war and death, as if he ever really stopped. A few months later, he got one of the greatest signs of being recognized as a phenomenal writer, not just in Japan, but in the world, as he was told he was a finalist for the Nobel Prize in Literature, though he did not win. In 1966, Mishima met two guys named Nakatsuji and Bandai. These are neo-nationalists who believed in Japanese people and the emperor and distrusted democracy, and to this end, they founded a magazine called The Controversy Journal. And Mishima fucking loved these guys.
Well, you did say he was obsessed with the Emperor after he got was it a watch from the Emperor?
Yep.
As a kid?
Silver watch.
Young man?
And also believing in the Japanese people. Think about what he said about why he loves kendo.
Yes.
They yell a lot. It's like Japan.
It's like Japan.
Also, I just love the provocativeness of founding a magazine called The Controversy Journal.
Yeah.
So Mishima said, as I listened to Bandai describe in his halting way the difficulties experienced by a group of youth who belonged to no political party, but were resolved to cure Japan of her ills and who had sworn unity, something stirred in me. And so Mishima starts donating a lot of money to the Controversy Journal, gets other people to do the same, and he tells Nakatsuji and Bandai that whenever they're around, he'll feed them, put them up, whatever they need. And a few weeks after meeting them, he writes a public statement apologizing for the way he lived a Western lifestyle as a Japanese man. He wrote that the Japan in front of him isn't really Japan. The people who created kabuki and Japanese style couldn't possibly be the same who think nothing of sitting in a chair and watching television in kimono. He followed up with a second article that criticized the idea he was too old to become a hero. Quote, I am still as strong and energetic as a young man. At 42, still just young enough to become a hero. Takamori Saigo died a hero's death at 50. And Saigo is the samurai guy who rebelled against modernization of Japan. Was also kind of a racist and an asshole, but basically saying, this guy died a hero at 50. I got a few years left. And now, thanks to Nakatsuji and Bandai, Mishima, again, like when he was 20 and published his first book, considered himself ready to die. On April 9th, 1967, Yukio Mishima in some ways achieved a lifelong dream. He enlisted in the army and underwent 46 days of basic training, showing up in the roles as Hireoka with no rank listed, though he allegedly tried to get in as a second lieutenant. He had been trying to arrange this for over a year, but the military wasn't fond of basically just coming around to hang out and join the trainees for a bit. But they did see the value in having the most famous author in Japan basically acting as a free recruitment ad. Some of his associates and assistants thought this would be a super bad idea. Like there was an editor at the publication Shinchosa who told him he would become a ridiculous figure. And then Mishima laughed at the guy and then told the publication, I never want to talk to that guy ever again.
He's so good at marketing.
He started with a week at the officers training school and then a month at the infantry boot camp at Mount Fuji. Then 2 weeks of physical training with a ranger division, including practicing parachute training at a 30-foot jump tower. Mishima thrived here, calling it an inexpressible thrill, and he estimated, I am about 40% cut out to be a soldier.
40%?
I don't know how you arrive at that.
He's pumping them numbers up from getting drafted, almost.
Yeah. You see, he's got the upper body, it's just he doesn't have the legs or the mindset.
Yeah, the upper 40% is cut out to be a soldier.
Mm-hmm.
He even got to learn how to drive a tank during a stop at one particular base, which is kind of extra funny because he refused to learn how to drive his personal car and made his wife drive him everywhere.
I'm not shocked by that either, actually.
Yeah.
I didn't know you were going to say that, but I'm not shocked by it.
No. But, I mean, you get a chance to learn how to drive a tank. You're going to turn that down?
Of course not. Of course not.
Ostensibly, he did all these training exercises out of a concern for Japan's self-defense and a desire to contribute. But beneath the surface, this is really him trying to better embrace Japanese warrior culture. And so, Japan at the time, and to this day, does not have a traditional army the way people would consider it. They were banned from having an army by the treaty ending World War II. But because the U.S., as we said before, likes to drag people into their wars, as the Cold War started to ramp up, they basically went, okay, you can't have an army, but you can have a self-defense force, which is just a military that's not allowed to leave Japan. And so Mishima, growing up as a...
Yes. Effectively, they are bound to have strike capability, but not any significant ones that can strike beyond their own borders.
Right. And so Mishima, growing up as a proud imperialist and a supporter of Japanese martial spirit, fucking hated this arrangement, and he thought it wasn't enough. He didn't think it was honorable for Japan. In October 1967, he wrote in the Controversy Journal supporting the creation of a civilian army to support the self-defense force, should it need help doing so against indirect aggression from the left. The idea was that twice a year for a month each, student and office worker volunteers would be accepted into the SDF for training and leave it ready to lead about 20 men in times of emergency. Along similar lines, on February 26, 1968, in an office of the Controversy Journal, Mishima and 11 students signed a blood oath to rise up with sword in hand against any threat to the culture and historical continuity of our fatherland. Which is totally non-concerning language from a nationalist.
It's always...
Nor is a blood oath.
That this definitely feels like Bubba making a militia.
It sure does. In March 1968, as universities let students out for the spring, Mishima himself led the first group of students training with the SDF, being dubbed the Japan National Guard, and of course he wrote their fight song.
I'm not surprised by that either.
Among this group were the people he met earlier, Nakatsuchi and Bandai. But the real star of the show in Mishima's eyes was the student captain, Mochimaru, who was all in on his ideals and personally brought half of the first recruitment class. But Mochimaru was engaged, and his fiancée wasn't too sure about him joining a paramilitary group led by one of Japan's most famous writers. So Mishima wrote her a personal letter saying, quote, "Our task is a curious, uncertain one. On the surface it is harsh, but to me it seems a task very like a poem. There is nothing so important to us as purity. Here at this military camp, as if in a laboratory flask, we are conducting an experiment in purity, with an eye to the uncertain future. I hope you'll understand." I don't. You did not.
No. I don't think anything was explained there.
No.
Imagine your spouse is joining a Stephen King's private army, and he's just like, "Don't worry about it. It's about purity," and that's all you hear.
Yeah.
The purity of Maine, if it's Stephen King.
Mishima's brother Chiyuki gave his take on the paramilitary group, saying he was playing war, that's all, which had a special excitement for him because he hadn't been allowed to do it as a child.
That's such an insightful thing to say.
Yep.
Also, probably spot on, just absolutely sniped by his brother.
Yep.
Incredible work.
Especially because, playing with girls, that's more of a boy thing. I don't want to make gender roles too much, but it is generally more of a boy thing, so that's even less of a chance he'd have to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Supposedly when the drills ended, the instructors and students shook hands and cried. Quote, "Except for movies and plays, this was the first time since the end of the war that I saw real men's tears." Mishima and 11 other graduates would later drive out of the city to take pictures with their fancy new uniforms that Mishima personally bought them, and he swore the photographer to secrecy. Later on, as people saw
Go ahead. It's always good when your militia leader describes people as real men.
Yeah. Really checking a lot of boxes here.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Later on, as people saw their uniforms, they were not well received, being compared to Later on, as people saw the uniforms, they were not well received, being compared to street performers or the doormen of a first-class hotel. Very scary stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed like at least the drills were a success, but Mishima had concerns that developed as things went on. He'd been trying to solicit help to fund his people's army, but everyone that offered funding wanted to influence who they politically supported, and that's just a non-starter. So Mishima decides the army can only be as big as one that he can personally support, about 100 men. And he would bring more and more groups to train, and the SDF is all about it because they have the best possible celebrity endorsement in Japan. So he gets told again he has a high probability of winning a Nobel Prize. He gathers with a bunch of friends at the Publishers Club, but he gets told by his fellow countrymen that a fellow Japanese writer, Kawabata, won instead. And Mishima wrote a big article talking about the fantastic work that Kawabata's done and how much this honors Japan. But as he left with a couple others to go visit Kawabata and pay his respects in person, it was said that he was sitting there kind of pissed off in the car. And at one point he muttered, it'll be at least 10 years before they award another laureate to Japan. So he's salty. We get into 1968. And that's a very big year for student demonstrations against communism, Marxism, overly rapid modernization, relations with the U.S., and Vietnam War. And this starts to be part of Mishima's growing political radicalism. The very same month, his private army decides on their name, Tate no Kai, the Shield Society. And the same month that they do this, a group of students take hostages at the University of Tokyo until 8,500 riot police sealed off and stormed it 2 months later in January 1969. Like I was saying earlier, this is kind of a crazy fucking time of shit going on.
Yeah.
There were no deaths among the student body during this huge riot police raid, whether between captors or hostages, and Mishima found this disgusting. He noted how they just threw rocks and smashed car windows, remarking, "I could do that," and he told his cadets, "Observe and remember, when the final moment came, there was not one of them who believed in what he stood for sufficiently to hurl himself out of a window or fall on a sword." The Liberal Democratic Party is in power at this point, and a member of the group asked Mishima, "Hey, we're trying to make a resolution opposing violence to try to calm things down. Will you add your name to this?" And he refused, saying, "I have never once opposed violence since I was born."
I dare say not. Especially, like, a little silly to ask about the man who formed his own militia.
Right.
Do you oppose violence? Of course he doesn't. He's trying to enact violence against himself any minute of the day, I'm sure.
He's getting a group of buddies together so they can all get way better at violence.
Exactly.
Yeah. He's probably been awarded most likely to create a death cult.
Yeah. Yeah. And so in October, the Shield Society actually does get mobilized as part of the local anti-riot response, but exclusively to collect intelligence or grasp the situation. He gets appointed special correspondent by the outlet Sunday Mainichi, and they give him a journalist to tag along with him. And the military, the SDF, gives him an intelligence officer to tag along, the guy who helped train the cadets. Mishima's intent, as he goes around pretending to be a reporter, is to see if there's escalation in the weapons the left has available. And so he runs back and forth amongst the mob of citizens, taking notes on everything he sees. And eventually, in the HQ of the Foreign Office, Chiyuki sees him run in wearing a jacket, boots, a press armband, and a riot helmet. And he tells him, "Hey, take off your jacket and helmet. Just relax a little bit." And Mishima stays at the window wearing his riot helmet, pulls out his lunchbox, and starts eating as he watches the scene. Quote from Chiyuki, "He was like a child with a new toy, which was the riots and the outfit and even the cold rice." For Shizue's part, she recalls his excitement, saying, "I was fascinated to hear him talk in great detail, gesticulating, but I was also spooked. I felt what had lain hidden deep in his heart spurted out all at once with a great force." By November 1968, Yukio Mishima effectively has a private army of 40 men, the Shield Society. And the press mocks his toy army, but things keep growing and more students are taken in over the next couple years. The process continues to expand. Prospects get screened by Mochimaru or another guy, Masakatsu Morita, and only if they pass them would they get taken to Mishima's home or meet him for dinner, where he would interview them again. And the only real requirements to join the Shield Society were to be politically unaffiliated, physically fit, and to have proper regard for the Emperor. Then they would get sent off to training and occasionally have a Shield Society meeting where they would all debate politics. At one point, one of the cadets asked Mishima to summarize the society's position, and he declared opposition to all plans and all actions, be they violent or non-violent, which attempt to establish a connection between communism and the government. Funny thing is, he didn't actually really hate or dislike communism. He was actually very upfront about that. Quote, "I was very much in need of an opponent, and I settled on communism. It's not as if communists had attacked my children or set my house on fire. I have very little reason, really. I simply chose communism as an opponent because I needed an opponent to provoke me to action."
I needed somebody to hate.
Yeah, might as well be communists.
Might as well be communists, especially because that's what everybody else is talking about right now. And I need a reason to be a soldier because I didn't get to be one first time around.
Mm-hmm.
Later on, he got asked again why he picked communism as his enemy. And he said that initially he chose eroticism as his enemy, and then people laughed at him. But he got tired of having eroticism as his enemy, so he had to create an illusion to other, landing him in communism.
Eroticism?
Yeah.
This man? This man? It seems a bit
This-
silly. Seems a bit self-destructive.
Mm-hmm.
Just a little bit. I mean,
So of course
everyone
he
else
couldn't
is being
stay
destructive
there.
to him for so long. Somebody's got to do it.
Somebody's got to do it.
In May, Mishima gets challenged to a debate by the United Student Front, the very group that organized a lot of these nationwide protests, and he accepted their challenge. He forbade the Shield Society from accompanying him, and he refused police protection that was offered. He showed up alone to a crowd of 2,000 people waiting next to a poster advertising the debate and portraying him as a caricature of an ape, calling him a modern gorilla. It was actually a very chilled, respectful debate. There was a bunch of students with ideas they hadn't fully formed, trying to extol their virtues to a man who was very entrenched in his own. And Mishima mostly just spent 2 or 3 hours trying to convince the students that the Emperor is awesome. That's really his whole position. Not like specifically the current Emperor, just in general, the idea of having an Emperor is pretty awesome and you guys should be down with it. At one point, he told the crowd... What?
I think I've debated this guy before.
You probably have. At one point, he told the crowd, if only you would speak the Emperor's name, I would gladly join hands with you. But since you refuse to do that, I say kill. It's that simple. He also relayed
Less of a debate. Not really a debate anymore. Your death threat.
Look, I mean, if you guys disagreed with me, I would not want to kill you all. That's all there is to it. He also relayed a personal anecdote. I grew up during the war, as you know, and I've seen the Emperor sitting up on a stand like this for 3 hours without moving 1 inch. 3 hours like a figure of wood without budging at our graduation ceremony. And I received a watch from the Emperor. I have that kind of personal feeling of gratitude toward him. I didn't intend to talk about this, and I don't want to talk about it, but there are things like this in one's personal history, and there's no way that I can deny this in myself. He was splendid, you know. The Emperor was magnificent on that day. And then all the students laughed at him.
As they should.
Yeah, because they're all like, hey, we want to have more say in the government. We want to have freedom and liberty. And he's like, yeah, but guys, the Emperor gave me a really cool watch. And he stood still for a really long time. You don't know how cool he was, guys.
You don't know. Have you considered the Emperor is cool?
I
think the Emperor is cool, and you should also be cool.
How long can you guys stand still? 3 hours? I don't think so. The Emperor could do it.
You're all students. You don't look magnificent. Y'all didn't give me a watch.
It was a really cool watch. The next month, Shinchosa published the debate, and Mishima gave the student movement half of the royalties. Quote, they probably used the money to buy helmets and Molotov cocktails. I bought summer uniforms for the Shield Society. All concerned are satisfied.
Okay.
Meanwhile, the Shield Society is bleeding its upper management. Nakatsuki gets kicked out of the Shield Society and the Controversy Journal for soliciting money in Mishima's name. Mochimaru cannot abide with his demands of celibacy, you know, being engaged and all. And so, in response, Mishima explains that in the February 1936 rebellion, the officers swore celibacy so they could be ready to give their lives, and the young lieutenant in patriotism was excluded from achieving glory because he broke his celibacy vow. And Mochimaru was not wooed by this literary analysis, and again refused to take up a vow of celibacy.
Weird hill.
Yeah. He's got some interesting points to try to convince people to take his side.
Celibacy is never going to be a big sell.
Yeah, but like, you didn't read that book.
I'm glad they didn't decide to go against eroticism, because I was concerned.
So Mishima even offers to let Mochimaru and his wife have him pay their rent if they would stay in the Shield Society, but Mochimaru leaves anyway, and he promised to help from the outside. Mishima ended up calling a member of the Shield Society to vent, and the person that he called said that losing Mochimaru wasn't him losing a right-hand man, but more the grief of a father betrayed by his son. And this is where Mishima latches onto Masakatsu Morita, the other person who interviewed people, as his top pupil in the Shield Society. Morita grew up as an orphan who once attacked a classmate for calling the Emperor a tax thief, and other students in the Shield Society said he spoke of death with a kind of relish. And so I think that says everything about why Mishima liked him.
Mm-hmm.
Truly.
Love me Emperor,
Birds of a feather.
love me death, simple as.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't know a ton about those two's time together, but a lot of people do speculate that they started a relationship around this time.
That's what I was trying to get at with the critic earlier. I was like, are we sure they're just friends? It seems like they could be more.
There are a lot of people that are alluded to as potential partners, and I tried not to write it unless people were pretty sure about it.
Gotcha.
Right.
This is something that's brought up on so many people that he spent time around, like other people, like his editors, other people who worked at same magazines, fellow authors, and it's kind of hard to really tell where there was or was not something along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
In the June of 1969, Mishima invites Kiyokatsu Yamamoto and some other officers to dinner after a training session for the Shield Society. Yamamoto's the guy who was in charge of training at the Ground Self-Defense Research School, and so he was in charge of training the Shield Society, and so that's why these two knew each other. But he ended up recently getting promoted beyond that role, and he was no longer training them, but he was still considered among Mishima's most trusted people. And so during this dinner in June 69, everybody gets gathered into a private room, and Mishima locks the door as he pulls out a paper with 3 action items on it: objectives and goals for the Shield Society, referred to by some as their ultimate act, which is never really all that well defined. Item 1 was that the Shield Society will prepare to storm the Imperial Palace and defend it and the Emperor to the death. And this is such a shocking plan to Yamamoto that he completely fucking forgot what items 2 and 3 even were.
Okay.
It's like, nope, I just got stuck up on the whole storm the Imperial Palace thing. Kinda wasn't listening much after that.
Yeah.
Sorry, what?
And so after he gets through all 3 items, Mishima burned the paper with the action items on it, and no more was spoken of it as the room was unlocked and the waiters entered. Which is always a good sign.
Mm-hmm. You know how I said death cult?
Yeah. Yeah. There was a lot of accurate predictions earlier by the two of you. A waiter asked if Mishima would prefer rice or bread, and he responded by shouting, "I hate bread!" Which I just think is kind of funny.
Mm-hmm.
Of course he does. He hates the West.
Before dinner is over, Mishima suggested that the Shield Society's next training mission takes place at the official residence of the Prime Minister. And partly because of public pressure about the increasingly right-wing Mishima being given military training with his own personal army, Yamamoto was very rightly spooked about what he just heard. He said, absolutely fucking not.
Mm-hmm.
Though he did seem to agree that the ultimate act for the Shield Society might involve the Emperor, he seemed to have no idea what that would be or how they'd get there. There just kind of seemed to be a vague sense that, yeah, Japan's losing its warrior spirit, so we got to do something with the Emperor.
Mm-hmm. Something Emperor.
Yeah. From Persona, a biography, since they had come to know each other, Yamamoto had come to agree with Mishima that the ultimate act for the Shield Society might involve the Tenno, but he had also come to realize they had 2 separate scripts leading to it, whatever it might be. So it really is literally something Emperor. We're the Shield Society, and we got a something Emperor.
Yeah.
Okay.
So obviously by this point,
they would iron that out.
You would fucking think. So by this point, obviously, Mishima, super famous author, famous actor, playwright, model, bodybuilder, martial artist. It's estimated, though, that he may have spent around 14 million yen, about $340,000 today, on the uniforms alone, plus regular outings, room and board on trips, training expenses, etc. Members of the Shield Society are starting to wonder, how the fuck is he paying for all of this? The personal army is taking up a huge chunk of his income, and it seems like he has to start changing up his publishing schedule to try to milk more money out of it. In late 69, Mishima wrote a play called My Friend Hitler. Who could have
You
seen
don't
that one
say.
coming?
I thought we were anti his dad, but I guess maybe not all of us.
He wrote the tagline himself, an evil hymn to the dangerous hero Hitler from the dangerous thinker Mishima. So it might have been a little bit tongue-in-cheek.
Okay, good.
The play tells the story of the Night of the Long Knives, which is where Hitler and the Nazis took out all of their internal troublemakers. They took out a lot of the socialist element, and they executed them all. And Mishima said in the program notes, all kinds of people have asked me, do you like Hitler that much? But just because I wrote a play about the man doesn't mean I have to like him. In all honesty, I am fascinated with Hitler, but if I had to say whether I liked or disliked him, I would have to say disliked. Hitler was a political genius, but not a hero. He was comprehensively lacking in the briskness and brightness indispensable to a hero. Hitler was dark as the 20th century itself. Which, I don't know about you guys, but some of that sounds to me like something that someone who really liked Hitler would say, but if they didn't want people to know they liked Hitler.
I have heard these similar things from people who dress up in Nazi uniforms at reenactments and have also been disturbed by them.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah.
Lots of concerns.
Oh, yeah.
That year, Mishima also directed a kabuki play, and he made all of the actors sit down and listen to a 3-hour-long tape of him reading all the lines.
Mm-hmm.
And over the next year, he would be the subject of 2 photo shoots. First, a photographic retrospective of himself called An Exhibit of Yukio Mishima, featuring pictures of him throughout his life, beginning with his old baby pictures, going up to the modern day, and including some nudies along the way. Because eroticism was not his enemy.
Certainly
but it
not.
also kind of was. But it wasn't. But it was.
There
You
seems to be a
can't own
lot
that
of
too
it was, but it
strongly.
wasn't with this guy.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
He's not done a whole lot of introspection since he was very small.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Then he did a series called A Man's Death, because of course he did, featuring pictures of him dying in various ways, like drowning in mud with a hatchet in his brain or beneath the wheels of a cement mixer.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting choice. All while
Healthy.
he continues his work as an actor, starring in the movie Kill, where he plays an assassin. And this is most notable where he enacts a scene where he shoves an assailant's sword into himself and drags it to the side like he's doing seppuku. But, like, in real life, he did this with such aggression that he ripped a patch of skin from his stomach.
Ow!
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
really trying to method act that one.
Mm-hmm.
The student protests mentioned earlier are still ongoing in 1969, though they have lost a lot of steam. According to Mishima, a biography, he seemed to despair at the way the riot police kept everything so much more under control than they had the year before. He had offered the services of the Shield Society to the Metropolitan Police, but they rejected the offer. They had everything under control. And if the riot police had it under control, they wouldn't call in the military. And if the military wouldn't get called on, they definitely wouldn't call in the Shield Society. And if the current constitution of Japan can resist the protests, there's no need to change it, doing anything like revoking the article that forbids making war or restoring the emperor in some way. It seems like Mishima really actually wanted these protests to blow up and get really bad to expose the government as weak and make them need the Shield Society. But that's not the way things are going. So on October 31st, 1969, the Shield Society leadership met, and they came up with a plan. Which, fantastic
Oh,
foreshadowing. We're all very excited for him to do something peaceful and turn his life around.
Their plan
I'm
is
sure
to
that's what
peacefully
he's-
disband.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I'm trying to say the same thing.
Mm-hmm. The plan is to peacefully disband and get into actual politics as a personality and make change from the inside.
Yes, that is their way. This is how the Shield Society operates.
Mm-hmm.
So on November 25th, 1970, at 10:15 a.m., Masakatsu Morita, Masayoshi Koga, Masahiro Ogawa, and Hiroyasu Koga arrived at Mishima's home in a white 1966 sedan. Everyone's wearing their Shield Society uniforms, while Mishima carried a katana and 2 short swords in a briefcase. When he gets in the car, he hands Masayoshi Koga an envelope, who opens it, and everyone else reads a letter that Mishima wrote to them. Then they take off to the SDF headquarters at Ichigaya, arriving at 10:50 a.m. They get taken to the second-floor office of the base's leader, Commandant Masuda, who is told that the Shield Society is in uniform because their monthly meeting is later, and the people who are currently accompanying Mishima are going to be honored as top members of the Shield Society. Masuda sees Mishima's katana and asks if it's edged, and he gets told that it is. And then he asks, did the police give you permission to carry that? And so Mishima unsheathes it and explains this is a Seki no Magaroku sword, that being one of the most famous Japanese swordsmiths ever and making the sword a 500-year-old antique. He asks Koga for a handkerchief, which would traditionally clear the blade before he presents it for inspection. Koga stands up, moves behind the Commandant, and puts a hand over his mouth as Ogawa and the other Koga grab his arms and tie his legs to the chair before gagging him. It does not take very long. It does not take very long before someone goes to check on the Commandant and finds it very strange that the door is locked. A colonel tries to bust down the door, but the Shield Society has barricaded the entrance, and Mishima starts making threats against the Commandant's life. Troops in nearby offices ignore the threats, and they try to storm the office and save the Commandant themselves. First, a Lieutenant Colonel Haruo busts down a side door and falls into the room, then shouts at Mishima, "Stop that!"
Stop doing a rebellion.
Mishima responds by swinging a sword at Haruo, who has to block it with his arm. Two more officers storm the room and get deep cuts to their arms and hands too. People are noting that he's not swinging the sword as hard as he can, but you don't have to swing a sword very hard for it to pretty well incapacitate you when you block it with your arm.
Yeah, it's not like swords are sharp or anything. And also, like, I love that we're doing like a hostage-taking situation, but you're adding a lot of assault charges.
Yes, many assault charges.
Many assault
with
charges.
A deadly weapon.
So
yes,
we've got assault, we've got kidnapping, we've got treason. Really stacking up.
Oh yeah.
Are they going to make a bomb threat? Because I feel like bomb threat is the next step here.
So they fend off that attack from a side door, and now they have to respond to another group of officers who broke in from the other side door. Morita grapples with two officers, one of whom disarms him by whacking his hands with a wooden sword, and then Mishima comes over and almost cuts the guy's hand off with a real sword. This is more a street fight than anything else. There are a couple of officers throwing things like a globe and an ashtray get chucked, but eventually they have to retreat because they're basically unarmed, fighting in close quarters against men with swords. So the rescue missions having failed, the officers decide to listen, and Mishima issues 4 demands. 1, that the entire Eastern Division assembles in front of the HQ by noon. 2, everyone quietly listens to Mishima's speech and his associates' remarks. 3, members of the Shield Society currently meeting at Ishigaya Kaikan be brought to the base to listen to the speech. And 4, no offensive action of interference takes place against them from 11 a.m. to 1:10 p.m. And by interference, he meant basically any interaction at all. Not just attempted rescue or distraction operations, but speeches through loudspeakers and attempts at dissuasion would be considered interference. Like, basically they were told, leave us completely the fuck alone for 2 hours or I kill the Commandant.
They really said, we're going to do a speech and it's going to change your mind. It's going to change your hearts and minds. It's going to change your life, this speech. And I'm believing it so strongly, you better bring my soldiers to listen. Yeah. You all better, and nobody better interrupt me while I give this speech. That's crazy.
It's going to be so good, you won't even believe.
You won't even believe. You won't even want me to press charges. Or you won't even press charges against me, rather, is what I'm trying to say. Or like, there won't be any kind of consequence to my actions at all if you just listen to my speech.
I'm a really good writer, and the Emperor is
He's super a really cool. Good writer.
And I don't need to demand. I don't need to demand amnesty because it's going to be fine once you hear my speech.
Yeah.
Yes.
So 7 men were wounded by the swordsman before the truce went into effect. And as a fun little side note, they were doing all this with absorbent cotton shoved up their asses in case they died and shit themselves. Like they were like meeting before this, and Mishima was like grabbing cotton balls, like, here, shove this up your ass. And they were like, what? Why? And be like, well, if you die, you don't want to shit yourself, do you? You want to have your pants all covered in shit when you're dead. That's not very honorable. So just keep in mind while all this is happening, they got cotton balls shoved up their asses.
He has thought about death entirely too much.
Oh, yeah.
This man has spent his entire life thinking about death.
Yes.
He is ready.
He thought of every possible angle.
Are his peers as ready as him? I don't know.
So as it turns out, a few months earlier in July, Mishima was out for dinner with his friend Munakatsu Date, who worked at Japan National Broadcasting. And during dinner, he asked Date, hey, would it be big news if I died? And then when his friend supposed it would be, he asked, if I decided to commit seppuku, could you televise that live?
Oh.
So on the date of this incident, before leaving his house, Mishima called Date and asked him to wait in the lobby next door to Ichigaya at 11 a.m. And so when he showed up, he found Mishima leading a hostage situation at a military base. And he was handed a letter by a member of the Shield Society who was told to meet him there. In the letter, Mishima explained how he couldn't know at the time of writing what would happen that day or the manner in which he would make his speech, so he would provide Date with a copy in order to prevent its confiscation by the police before it was properly heard. Date was told that the Shield Society on the third floor wasn't told of the events taking place, but it explained, understand this is a minor incident, merely a private play of our own. We just went into a military base and took the leader hostage and then made a list of demands. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
We're just doing a thing.
It's fine. It's fine. It's a skit.
At 11:55 a.m., Morita went outside to hang the Shield Society banner bearing their demands. 5 minutes later, Mishima went out to address the crowd and began his speech. And it was the kind of speech you probably could have written on his behalf if you've heard even a little bit of nationalist rhetoric and or Japanese warrior culture. Mm-hmm. It was basically just a really long rant about how the SDF wasn't a real army because it let itself be made impotent by a constitution that didn't let them fight honorably. Right away, people are already violating his second demand. They do not listen quietly to the speech. They are just all shouting at him. And there's a degree where they might not have even heard a lot of it because they were just booing and yelling at him so hard, telling him to stop being a hero and let the commandant go. One of the cadets barricaded in the office told the people outside that if the troops didn't quiet down, they'd kill the commandant, but they kept disobeying and just kept screaming at Mishima. He tries to get out his speech over the shouts, but he ends up cutting a planned 30-minute speech down to just 7. Oof. Mishima urges the soldiers to die for the Shield Society in the name of Japan. Quote, is there no one here who will throw their bodies against this degenerate constitution and die? If there is, stand with us and die with us now. And they just keep booing him.
Yeah.
So Mishima and Morita...
to die today.
No, they just saw a super famous man show up in a balcony with a sword saying, we took your commander hostage. Mm-hmm. Like, again, think of all the stuff this man did. Try to, like, mash, like, Stephen King, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and, like, Donald Glover into the same person, and imagine you're, like at work, and you just see him, like, taking your boss, like, hostage. It's like, is that Stephen King? The fuck?
And then he climbs onto a balcony and starts screaming about how taxes are bad, and you should definitely join his militia because taxes are bad, and...
Like, that must have been such a surreal experience.
It would have to be.
So, Mishima and Morita chant 3 times, long live his imperial majesty, and they go back inside from the balcony. Mishima had told the Shield Society when the plan was first discussed that he didn't actually think they could persuade any of the troops to join them, but he probably didn't think he would have been outright ignored and disrespected like he was. As soon as he's out of sight, the crowd quiets down, and Mishima mutters, I don't think they even heard me.
No, babe, I don't think they did.
So Mishima sits on the floor facing the balcony, opening his jacket, and he prepares to commit seppuku, with Morita as a second, taking position behind him, ready to cut his head off. And so Mishima takes the short sword and stabs himself in the left side of the abdomen, then drives the blade to his right. And he had a brush and paper that he intended to write the word sword on at this point, before he got decapitated. But as it turns out, he really super underestimated how debilitating it is to be disemboweled, and he was not able to do so.
Turns out it hurts a little bit.
It turns out it hurts a lot. It makes it really hard to do things when you stab yourself and cleave your guts a little bit. So he slumps forward, and Morita slashes and cuts his neck. But there is a reason that fantasy media uses cleave a man's head from his shoulders in a single blow as a way to demonstrate strength. It is really fucking hard to cut someone's head off in one stroke. And so all that Morita did was create a huge sword gash in the back of Mishima's neck. And so Masayoshi Koga yells to Morita, again! And he slashes again and fails again. And so he yells, Koga! And then Koga takes the sword and finishes beheading Mishima, and then does the same for Marita. Took 3 fucking sword slashes to cut the guy's head off. After he failed to write down the thing that he wanted to write down because he didn't know how much it was going to hurt. Really, this is just such a horribly botched seppuku in every way.
Truly.
Not just the seppuku.
But everything before it.
Everything. Every
what
part
were these
of
people
this.
training for if they couldn't behead somebody?
There really should have been more
single
beheading
stroke.
training. So the remaining cadets bow to the heads. The remaining cadets bow the heads of their fallen comrades, then remove the commandant's gag and they let him bow, and then everyone cries together. By 12:20 p.m., the commandant is released, and the remaining Shield Society members in the room with him surrender themselves to the police, with Mishima having forbidden them from joining him in seppuku so as to tell the story and spirit of the Shield Society to Japan. And then, by his will, the Shield Society was also disbanded. Tell our story to everyone. Also, stop making that story. Stop doing the thing that the story is of.
Yeah.
Yukio Mishima is buried the next day in his Shield Society uniform in a private funeral service that was rushed because they had to get him to the crematorium before it closed. A public memorial service is held on January 24th, 1971, and around 8,200 people showed up, which Azusa was really jazzed about. He was really hype about how many people showed up for his son's funeral.
That'd be such a weird eulogy.
I'm sure that he was.
This man was amazing, and he went out spectacularly.
The members of the Shield Society that joined Mishima and his son at the military base would serve 4 years in jail for a crime that was basically equivalent to obstruction of justice, minus the 180 days already served at the time. And they would only ultimately serve 2.5 years, which way less than I would have thought when they were attacking soldiers with swords.
Yeah.
Even in the court case prosecuting them for what was basically a coup attempt, the court couldn't help but declare that they should have stopped him from committing suicide, noting his great talent as a writer. Mishima's radicalism... Go ahead.
Sure, you were doing a treason, but, he was pretty famous.
He wrote a lot of really good books. You shouldn't have let him do that.
And have you seen those abs?
I've seen those legs.
Scrawny.
Mishima's radicalism would continue to inspire others, with his works being cited as the reasons for multiple terrorist attacks based on nationalist ideology. And in 1977, 2 former members of the Shield Society would be part of a group that took 12 hostages, demanding the end of the current regime perceived to be unjustly influenced by the West. But even aside from his influence in Japanese right-wing nationalism, today Yukio Mishima is considered one of the greatest Japanese authors of all time. And this is episode 10.
Fascinating.
Legitimately a fascinating life.
Truly,
oh,
yeah. He's got so much going on the whole time.
He does. He also stayed true to his initial goal of being weird about death.
Being truly weird about death.
His initial goal of being dead.
Here's the thing about people who think about death. They do not think about the planning of their own death after, and they probably should. Have a death plan, everyone.
Yeah. He planned a lot during the death, and all of it went wrong.
All of it went wrong. But,
yeah,
I mean, like after. How do you want to be buried?
A lot of romanticization of death, and yeah, you can't write shit out while your guts are on the floor.
Yeah.
There are some people that are that badass, and they are very, very rare.
It's not the kind of thing you can plan for. It's
it's
hard to know ahead of time how much it hurts to get disemboweled and how debilitating it is.
Practice is difficult.
But it also makes sense that he would be the type of person like, I could do that. I'm a real Japanese guy.
That's so true. And he had to pick seppuku too, as the way.
I do have to wonder how things would have went if Natsu didn't fuck him up like that.
Right?
It would be less.
Yeah. Just beginning to end, the psychological torture that he grew up with.
Yep. And just never really broke out of it.
Yeah, it was never going to end well.
No. I mean, I don't think a lot of people saw it going to a coup attempt, but
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But, that's where we ended up.
That's where we ended up.
You got to figure the whole time when he keeps talking about death, some kind of shit's going to happen at the end. He's not going to just, like, get cancer.
And then he retired, and he's currently alive in Florida.
Right?
Yeah.
He would be 101.
Yeah.
Feasible.
It
would be feasible that he could be alive if he didn't do all this shit, but...
Especially if you're rich. But, no.
Well, less rich when you're funding a private army.
Yeah.
And spending over $250,000 on uniforms.
Yeah, but they had to be snazzy-ass uniforms.
They said that made him look like a bellhop. Like a hotel bellhop.
But they'd be the snazziest bellhops around.
Yeah. Snazzy in the come here, boy type of way.
Absolutely.
It feels like he went for like a Napoleonic era uniform.
Hey everybody, Lorecube here. Hope you liked this episode. This one was a bit of a bear to get through. The primary sources were Mishima, a biography by John Nathan, and Persona, a biography of Yukio Mishima by Naoki Inose and Hiroki Sato. I feel like the 10 episode mark, first off, allows me to throw in another, if you like these, like, comment, and subscribe, send recommendations to your friends. And now I'll stop being obnoxious about that for a bit. But I also just want to say thanks to everyone who stuck it out for 10 episodes. This was kind of the point where I wasn't sure I would make it to 10 episodes. And I figured if I did, then that would be a good sign that this is just something I can do for a while. So thanks for everyone who has helped push me and reinforce everything to get me to this point. It's been a fun ride. And I hope that everyone sticks around and keeps spreading the word. And otherwise, I will catch you for episode 11, hopefully. See you around.